Gets Real. I am your host, Greg Getz. Today we are going to be talking about the 5 good emperors of Rome. Now, as I said in the introduction, this is going to be a near and dear episode to my heart because the 5 good emperors is what I did my capstone project on. These were 5 individuals who inherited the throne to Rome through not so common means. Most of the time, people that came to the throne in Rome were either inherited the throne through, uh, you know, being born to the emperor, or there was a coup, conspiracy, what name you. These 5 gentlemen were adopted by the emperor that was in place at the time, and then they inherited the throne. They didn't necessarily have any family ties to these specific people, right? So the first one was Nerva. He took over the throne of Rome after Damashin, who was conspired against and assassinated by the Senate and the army. They appointed Nerva to take his place after Damashin's death. Nerva adopted Trajan before he died, and then Trajan took over. Trajan adopted Hadrian. Antoninus Pius was adopted by Hadrian, and then Marcus Aurelius was adopted by Antoninus Pius. Now, the 5 good emperor period ended after Marcus Aurelius' death, because then his son Commodus is the one that took over as emperor, and that is where the empire started to literally go to shit, because Commodus was fucking psycho. He was a train wreck, and we'll get to him later. But first, I want to start off with what led up to these 5 men being adopted and taking over the mantle of being Emperor of Rome. Because it wasn't like it just happened overnight. This was years and years of conspiracies and assassinations and just terrible people in control of Rome, that finally the Senate, the army, the people, they just said, enough's enough, these fuckers suck. We need to get someone in here that actually knows what they're doing and is actually going to help us. Now, there is a quote by a man named Edward Gibbons. He said, "If a man were called to fix the period in the history of the world during which the condition of the human race was most happy and prosperous, he would, without hesitation, name that which elapsed from the death of Domitian to the ascension of Commodus." So it is a historical fact that these 5 men, the 5 good emperors, ushered in an era that saw so much prosperity and just an overall well-mandated administrative direction in world history. Now, I'm not saying that it was perfect. There were issues, and all of them, each one had their own problems here and there, and we will get to that later. But overall, this was a time when there wasn't that much warfare. Logistically and administratively, Rome was prosperous and it was flourishing. And, there was also a certain point in time under the rule of Hadrian when the cultural aspect was expanding, because Hadrian loved everything that had to do with Greece. And he wanted to bring the culture and the arts and literature from Greece and integrate it into Roman society. And he was obsessed with it. So it was more, there was a lot of philosophy behind it as to how they wanted Rome to behave, and, how they wanted to elevate it to the next level of prosperity. After years of civil war and siblings fighting each other for the throne and saying, "No, it's mine, no, it's mine," acting like petulant children, it just became understandable that we don't need someone who's related to the emperor, because every time we have someone that's related to the emperor, they frickin' suck. Niccolo Machiavelli even said it, that those who succeeded the throne by birth were unanimously bad, and those who were adopted were good. And case in point, these 5 emperors, like I said, they had their issues, they had their demons, but inherently they were all decent people who were in it for the betterment of not only themselves, but their people overall. We're going to jump into what started it all. So the idea of adoption began with Augustus. Augustus ruled in the late BCE era, which was before the Common Era, which was 1 to now. He had hopes of creating a dynasty in his own name. He wanted his family to live on through the ages. He was descended from Julius Caesar, who, despite, wanting to be the dictator of Rome, it is a fact that Julius Caesar was a remarkable leader, militarily and, administratively, even though he did end up going a little power hungry. So Augustus had this long, drawn-out plan that he was going to have his best friend marry his daughter, and then they were going to have kids, and then his best friend ended up dying, so he adopted his stepson. It's a long, drawn-out process of, friends dying, and children dying, and sons not wanting to take over. It was just a mess. And Augustus's plan of creating a dynasty was kind of going to crap. So he asked his friend Agrippa to marry his daughter Julia. They had 2 sons, Gaius and Lucius. They ended up dying. Agrippa ended up dying. And so he adopted his stepson Tiberius, and he said, "You are going to marry my daughter Julia," which is a little weird, but this was a different time, intermarriage or interfamily marriage was, kind of common, keep bloodlines pure and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's right, it's kind of gross, but, whatever. So he adopted his stepson Tiberius, and then made him divorce his wife to marry Julia. Before his 2 grandsons, Gaius and Lucius, died, they were heavily favored to take over after Augustus' death. But unfortunately, they passed away shortly after their father, Agrippa. There's no telling how they died. Disease was rampant back then. It's not exactly like Rome was the cleanest area. He adopted his stepson Tiberius, named him his successor, and then Tiberius didn't want anything with it. He didn't want to inherit. It's kind of like a movie that you see where this rich dad has a plan laid out for his son, like, oh, you're going to attend Yale and you're going to become a lawyer and stuff like that, and the son's like, this is your plan, Dad, not mine. This is basically what happened. Augustus adopted his stepson Tiberius and was like, you're going to take over after I die. And Tiberius was like, the hell I am. That's what you want to do. That's not what I want to do. So he said adios and went to live in Rhodes in a villa. And he was just like, peace out, dude. I'm not having any of this. This is all you. Augustus kind of took that personally. He was like, what the fuck, man? Like, I'm laying this empire on a silver platter for you, and you don't want any of it? It was shortly after that Augustus fell very ill. And before he died, Tiberius, knowing that his father named him the successor, convened the Senate and basically said, all right, I'm here. Let's get this shit going. Like, before his dad is even in the grave, he was like, alright, I know what my dad wants, like, let's get this stuff going. And, the Senate was just like, alright, whatever, like, the Emperor's dead, all hail the Emperor, that kind of crap. This is where it starts to get really confusing, because Tiberius was afraid that his nephews wanted to take over, so he had them assassinated. It's bad, there's a lot of assassinations and stuff like that. Tiberius went to go live in Syria and man the fronts and stuff like that. He's still emperor. He went to Syria and he was poisoned, killed. So then his son Drusus took over, but he died as well. So it already Augustus' plan for a dynasty is just crap. It's all done. Tiberius died. His son died. It just led to mass hysteria. So then this guy Claudius was named emperor. He was part of the aristocracy, so he had a name behind him. Blah 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 blah. Claudius's wife murdered him, so that her son could take over. Nero. That name might sound familiar. Nero is one of the more prolific emperors from Rome. While he was okay, he wasn't all there. I mean, this is a guy that was accused of burning Rome to the ground, And while it was on fire, he was off in some villa, like performing stage theater and playing on a lyre while Rome burned. I don't know, dude. You got your priorities messed up if, you're letting your city burn while you're playing an instrument, but to each their own and stuff. But Nero was a descendant from Augustus, so it kind of remained within Augustus's plan of creating a dynasty, but he was a distant relative, but a relative nonetheless. Yeah, the fire that I was talking about, the fire spread throughout Rome in 64 CE. So now we are into the new millennia. And as the city burned, people are dying. They don't have the proper tools to handle a big fire. And I mean, you got to think, ancient cities back then were very, very close together. They weren't as spread out as they are now. And it's not like they were made out of metal or anything like that. These are thatch houses and wood and, clay and stuff like that. So fire spreads relatively easily. So yeah, Nero is on a stage while the city is burning, and he's singing about the destruction of Troy. Now, it is not proven whether or not that he started these fires or not, but he didn't seem too concerned about it. So, strike number one right there. He was a stage dude at heart. Nero wasn't exactly an emperor at heart. He was a performer, and that's what he did best. While he did handle some things very well when it came to the logistics and administrative duties as being an emperor, at heart he was a poet. He was a songwriter. He performed on stage for the Senate and the people. So, yeah, the people liked him a little bit, but, performing on stage can only get you so far when you're kind of being a shitty leader. Nero ended up dying, and this caused a power vacuum because he did not have an heir. He didn't have any kids, he didn't have an heir, no one was named a successor upon his death. So there was this guy named Galba. He was a legion leader in Gaul, which is like modern day France, Spain, that kind of area. While he is in Gaul on the frontier, he's just like, all right, Nero's dead. I'm Caesar. And, his army, they're just like, yeah, Caesar. And everyone's like, who the fuck is this guy? So he named him Caesar, made his way back to Rome to claim the throne. No one else did. No one else claimed him. His army was behind him, but everyone else was just like, get out of here, scrub. No one likes you. No one even knows who you are. But this was the first time, apart from, like, Augustus didn't really adopt anyone, it was his stepson and stuff, but this was the first time that we actually see an adoption process outside of the family. So Galba names himself Caesar, and then he adopted someone that wasn't in his family, and his name was Piso, and he did this in front of his legion. He was like, hey, I'm Caesar now, and this guy right here, Piso, I'm going to name him my successor. He's been in my army for a while now. I think he's a stand-up guy, and I think he can lead. So he's going to be my successor if I die. There was this other guy named Otho, who was Galba's closest friend and ally. He was like, what about me, dude? Like, we fought together for years, and you're going to name this nobody your successor? Okay. He took that personally. And he staged a coup and had Galba and Piso murdered. Now, the interesting thing about this, the first of the 5 good emperors' name was Nerva, okay? Now, when Galba and Piso were murdered, their heads were placed on poles, and Otho declared himself as Caesar. Now, the man in charge of killing these people, so this is like around 46 CE, something like that. The man who was in charge of killing Galba and Piso was Nerva. Alright? So, he harkens back. Nerva was with the Senate for many, many years before he became emperor. So, I mean, he's worked under a lot of different emperors and a lot of different senators. So, his name was well known. He wasn't exactly, the greatest or the most popular emperor or senator out there, but he was a guy that was known, and he made a way to make himself allied with every emperor that came to be. I mean, if you want to make it anywhere, with how many times the throne changed, you gotta try and kiss ass so that your head doesn't end up on a spike as well. So he played the game relatively well and made himself in good favors with each emperor that came to be. Now, once Galba and Piso were murdered, Otho declared himself Caesar, and the fucker only ruled for 3 months before he was killed. Right? So this is just a train wreck after train wreck after train wreck, okay? So Otho was killed after 3 months by the next emperor, Vespasian. That's a V, Vespasian. They were killed in battle because Otho declared himself emperor. Vespasian was out on another frontier near the Danube River, and he was like, fuck that. No, this dude's not emperor, I'm emperor. So they met on field. Otho was killed. Vespasian took over. He had a son, Damashin. We'll get to that name later. So Damashin was Vespasian's son. Vespasian took over. He died a few years later, so then his son, Damashin, took over. He didn't have any other siblings, so it was just him. This is one of the problems that I came across in my research on Damashin. So it was unanimously decided that this man was one of the worst emperors in Roman history. I could not find very many academic articles or books or anything like that detailing his accomplishments. And one of the things that I did come across was the reason behind that was because he, the victors write history. That is a well-known fact. Anyone who survives a battle, wins, a campaign or anything like that, they're the ones that dictate how history is written. So he was not exactly the most favorable emperor. I think that these Roman historians smeared his name after his death, because, he ruled, he wasn't exactly the greatest, people said that he ruled with an iron fist, and he was authoritative, and, just not an all-around good person. So when he was assassinated, and the Senate appointed Nerva, the first of the 5 good emperors, to take over, there were a lot of Roman historians that trashed Damashin's name. And, maybe he was terrible, maybe he wasn't. But we can't really know for sure, because maybe it was just a way to squash any of his supporters that might have wanted to retake the throne in his name. Yeah, he was not looked on upon as being a great emperor, but like I said, we don't really know for sure. It's probably just, slander and misleading. Alright, so the year is 96 CE. So like I said, Augustus started this in 23 BCE, okay? So now the year is 96 CE. This was many years of people coming into becoming emperor, dying as their emperor, a new person coming in, them dying, and all this crap. This was just musical chairs for the throne, which is no way to run the world's largest empire at the time. It's just a joke. But then Nerva comes in, okay? Nerva wasn't the most well-known senator in Rome. He had a few postings here and there throughout Rome. There were some tablets found detailing his time as a praetor, which is like a military leader, and a senator and stuff like that. So he had his time spent in administrative positions, but he was an older man. He was seen as feeble and old, and I think he was appointed because it was like a safe bet. Like, oh, this guy's gonna die soon, he's relatively old, he has no children, so he's not really much of a threat, he doesn't have an army behind him, he doesn't have a lot of supporters and conspirators behind him, so I think this is just a safe bet to appoint this old guy while we find a suitable replacement. And, it worked, he was involved in the conspiracy to take out Damashin, and he really took it to heart that he was picked to replace Damashin as emperor. He really, really was pleased about this. He was very good friends with Nero when he was emperor. He worked on poetry with Nerva. Nero. My apologies, with Nero. he wrote songs with him. He engaged in stage theater with Nero. So he and Nero were good friends. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe um, why he was picked, but I think it was just because he was a safe bet. And I mean, at this age, the guy was like 60 some odd years old. At that time, I mean, you're practically on your deathbed. So no matter who his allegiance to was in the past, the guy played the game very well because, he didn't want to end up dying either. Um, so, let's see here. It was believed that Nero, or that Nerva, sorry, all these names sound the same. It was believed that Nerva was not the first choice, just because of the fact that he was older. But he did come from some moderate nobility, so I mean, he did have a little bit of a name behind him, and he knew the stuff. He the dude is old as hell, so I mean, he had the background for administrative stuff. Um, Now, while he wasn't exactly illustrious, um, he had lived through many different emperors, so he knew how not to behave and how to behave, and what kind of actions you should shy away from if you don't want to die or have a coup placed against you. So I mean, that's pretty easy, and he was manipulated. He wasn't exactly the strongest in uh, military standards. He had a few military postings, but nothing too extravagant. Um, Now, it is highly disputed, but it's believed that he inherited a shitty treasury. It's believed that Damashin, like, trashed the treasury in order to build great lavish villas and just all kinds of public works programs that were completely unnecessary. So Nerva became emperor and had no money whatsoever. But there were a series of public works programs that he instilled, and he also passed a legislation that would help the poor children of Rome and like orphans and stuff like that. He really cared about the kids, and he wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. So he had a couple different public works funds set aside to help the orphans and the children of Rome and stuff like that. And funny enough, I mean, it had nothing to do with him being a pervert, but trust me, that is more common than you could possibly believe. There were so many perverts in charge of Rome. They're just wait, we'll get to a few of them. So, yeah, he set up a trust fund to aid the poor and orphan children of Rome, and in September of 90 C, so about a year, he ruled for about a year, 96 to 97, and then he adopted Trajan by his son by law and named him as his successor. And then in January of 98, Nerva passed away from what appeared to be natural causes. He was an older gentleman, so then he passed away. He wasn't terrible. He wasn't great. He was chosen because, he had served in the Senate for so long. He was seen as trustworthy, but also not someone that was overly ambitious just because of his age. He was just a safe bet until there was a substantial replacement to take over for him. So, I mean, I couldn't really say that he was a terrible leader. He definitely did what he could in the time that he had, setting up that trust fund to help the poor children. I mean, gotta help the orphans, man. I mean, that's pretty good. Especially when you had an emperor a few years ago that just let the city burn while he was singing la-di-da-di-da on the stage. So, hey, you're already a step on the right path, Alright, so the next guy to take over was Trajan. And let me tell you, it was so much fun to read about Trajan. This guy had it all. He had charisma. He had the military backing so that no one would fuck with him. He was kind and caring, but authoritative, and he knew what he wanted. He was loved and adored by the people, and the Senate respected him. Trajan is the epitome of perfect leadership. This guy could do no wrong, and he really did not, One of the historians that talked a lot of crap about Damashin upon his death was Pliny the Younger. And let me tell you, Pliny had a little bit of a chubby when it came to Trajan. I mean, the things that I found that Pliny wrote about Trajan, this dude had a serious bro crush on him. I mean, he was talking to him about all the time. Just, oh, Trajan is this and Trajan is that, my dear Trajan. Oh, great and mighty emperor. And Trajan's just like, yeah. Calm down, kid. All right, it's fine. Just do what I did. Just do what I put you in power to do. Oh, I'm so grateful that you put me in power. It's like, dude, calm the fuck down. Get off his dick, okay? But I mean, it's true. He was a fantastic leader, and I can't stress that enough. So, at the time of Nerva adopting him, Trajan was governor of Upper Germany, okay? And he received a handwritten letter from the emperor himself. You know, he sent out a courier. Nerva sent out a courier to deliver a letter to Trajan and say, hey, I'm adopting you as my son. Trajan didn't know it was coming. You know, he had met the emperor once before, but, you know, he was just up in Upper Germany, minding his own business, controlling the frontier, when all of a sudden this kid shows up, and it's just like, here, I have a letter from you, and it's just like, hey, Trajan, what's up? I'm Emperor Nerva. You might have heard about me. I'm adopting you as my son. I mean, what do you do at that point? You can't say no. It's just like, holy shit. Okay, cool. Like, looks like I'm the next successor. So, when he heard about Nerva's death, he didn't move back to Rome immediately. He was like, alright, he's dead. The emperor's dead. Long live the emperor. You know what he did? He stayed at his post to make sure that the leadership was transitioned properly, to make sure his men were taken care of, to make sure the frontier was secure, and he didn't want to leave any loose ends before he headed back to Rome. When it was announced that Nerva was dead and Trajan was emperor, there was a coup. A couple praetorians under the leadership of this guy named Tiberius. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. I am sorry. They were like, okay, the new quote-unquote emperor is up in Germany. Let's stage a coup. So they tried to take the throne out from under Trajan. And Trajan heard about this and he was like, all right, send them a letter. Tell them I'm proud of them. Tell them that they are cool and I want them to come up here and I want to bestow a special commission upon them. And they're just like, whoa, you mean he's not mad at us? Like, we just took the throne out from under him and he doesn't want to kill us right now? Okay, that's cool. So they get word that Trajan wants to honor them and give them a special commission. They go up there and they're expecting this big feast in their name and everything like that. Trajan kills them. He killed them. So these two dudes are just complete jackasses and they're like, yeah, we're the emperors now. Oh, the actual emperor wants to bestow an honor upon us? Wow, this is our lucky day. I mean, what did you think was gonna fucking happen? Talk about idiots. So they went up there, thought they were gonna get something special, and Trajan kills them. Like, no. You're not emperor. I'm emperor. Nice try, scrub. Sit down. Before he went to Rome, he inspected the frontier along the Rhine and the Danube to tell his men, I will not forget about you. Too long has the frontier people been forgotten about, neglected, and that's not going to happen under my leadership. I'm here to take care of you. I want to make sure you guys are well taken care of and that you have my confidence and that I have yours. I mean, not that many leaders today even do that. I mean, how often do you see politicians go to the front lines of where they are engaging in warfare and instill confidence among the troops? Like, they go to like Air Force bases and other bases and stuff like that where, you know, nothing's even happening. Like, yes, I know there are forward deployed troops and stuff like that. They're away from home. I get that. I respect that. But to visit these frontier areas, I mean, this was a different time. This is when guerrilla warfare was rampant. And I mean, the frontier wasn't exactly a picnic in the park. This was some dangerous stuff. You were in enemy territory no matter what. So, I mean, Trajan just strolls along these frontiers and is just instilling this confidence and power into his men. And is like, I will not forget about you. and he didn't. When he arrived at Rome, Trajan was greeted as a hero. People in the streets were throwing themselves at him and embracing him, and he was embracing them back. You know, the senators were sitting there and they were waiting for him and being patient, waiting for him to come up the steps, but he was sitting there mingling with the people and hugging people and, talking to them and getting to know them, and he was really instilling a confidence that the people of Rome had not seen in so long. An emperor who put himself down on their level and wanted to talk to them like they were citizens and the same. And they were. Trajan didn't hold himself above anyone else at the time. Yeah, sure, he was emperor, but he didn't think that he was in a position where he could flaunt himself above his people. And what is not to admire about that? He went out into the streets and he talked to the children, he talked to the women and men and the elderly, and he embraced them like they were brothers and sisters. What's not to love about that? He's doing all of this with the people, and then he goes up to the Senate, and it's like a switch flipped, and he becomes this, he wasn't an asshole, but the confidence that he instilled and brought to the Senate, he wasn't letting anyone walk over him. This guy had so much charisma that he walks into a room and people just stare at him, and they're just watching to see what he does. His approachability and his modesty helped win the support of the people, and I mean, given what is believed to have happened under Damashin, like, that is night and day. What isn't to love about that? While adopted by Nerva, it was not lost on the people that Trajan was also the biological son of a very distinguished man in Rome. Trajan's father was well respected, and in the words of this historian Pliny, the guy that absolutely loves Trajan, he wasn't quite deified by the people, but he was definitely sitting among the stars. In the speech delivered by Pliny upon Trajan's return to Rome, Pliny states, "No tie of kinship or relationship bound adopted and adopter. Your only bond was that of shared excellence, rendering you worthy either to be chosen, to choose or be chosen. Nor is there a more fitting way to adopt a son, if the adopter is the princeps, the leader. If he is destined to rule all, he must be chosen from all. Not to adopt someone who in the eyes of all could have proved a ruler, even without adoption, would indicate the wanton tyranny of power." So this idea, what Pliny is basically saying, the emperor adopted the best man among the best men, among the members of the senatorial class. In his family life, the emperor had to disregard his love for his own children. He had to look for the best man among his peers and raise him to the throne by adoption. Nerva saw that in Trajan. He saw, "You are not my son, but you come from a well-respected and renowned military leader, and I see what you are doing in Upper Germany, and I want you. You are what Rome needs. You are the leader that is going to lead Rome into a more prosperous future," and he could not have been more right. That is all I have for today. Tomorrow, we are going to pick up more on Trajan, and then we're going to jump into the other emperors. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back and listen to some more. Thank you so much, y'all. Take care.